The Joe Rogan Experience.
You know, when it came to Yang, I felt like here we had a guy who I'm not a big fan of UBI, but
it's a weird one, right?
I think the way he put it spoke more to me than the way anyone else ever framed it, and I actually felt like he shouldn't have called it universal basic income.
Didn't he call it the freedom dividend?
Right.
Yeah.
But it became UBI to so many people. That's how they went with it.
Yeah.
When you see, Amazon, Google, and these big companies becoming just insane behemoths that can't be broken up, they just absorb and absorb and absorb, then there's an argument for some kind of dividend to the American people for potentially what they do outside of the United States. It's very complicated economics. I guess I'm not smart enough to, pretend like I know anything about. But you look at, he brought the example of Alaska. They have the oil drilling. The people who live in Alaska get a portion of that revenue and those profits. That makes sense. UBI, the way it's framed in general, makes very little sense. And it eventually, I think we're actually seeing now with the government stimulus, one of the biggest pitfalls to it. Did you hear there was a story they ran on NBC, a woman, her employees were like in revolt because she acquired a loan from the Paycheck Protection Program that insured their jobs, meaning they would receive less money. Because under the CARES Act, they would have received a bonus of $600 per week on top of the salary they'd normally get. They actually preferred to have lost their jobs. So you have people who are complaining that they're keeping their jobs now. So
that's one instance, though.
There's a couple stories like that. But the challenge with just giving people cash is the assumption that the cash has inherent value when the value of it is based upon what you can get for it. So one of the lessons I think we learn now with the economy being shut down is doctors and nurses got to work. That we need them on the front line. They're also getting paid. What do they use that money for? Pay their rent, buy food, things like that. We're facing food shortages. If you can't buy anything with the money, what's the point of taking the money? I mean, like if you were given the choice, you're going to work, you're going to go work your job at a grocery store, you're an essential worker, we're going to pay you $400. Your buddy, who isn't?
Let me stop you right there. Because the universal basic income was not designed to deal with the pandemic. It was designed to deal with automation, which would have not stopped the supply chain, which wouldn't have created food shortages. This is a sort of a unique situation. So you're comparing apples to oranges. You're applying universal basic income to our current situation, which has nothing to do with the reason why he wanted to implement it in the first place. He's worried that automation is going to take away jobs.
He's right. It will.
It probably will.
Now consider this problem, though. There will always be some kind of essential work, right?
Yes.
What do you tell the essential worker when other people are getting money and don't work that you have no choice because you're essential? Even in an automation system. So let's say every job but groceries.
But hold on a second. They're only getting a small amount of money to stay alive. You would rather have a good job where you're getting paid well and have benefits and all that other stuff.
I think that's an assumption.
I see it is an assumption.
Yeah.
But the problem with universal basic income, the real problem is a psychology issue. The real problem is the way human beings work. We need incentives. People don't just want to survive and get a little check from the government. People will be despondent. You don't want to create a United States of welfare, like an all-encompassing thing where these programs that are in place that automate all of the goods and services, they take some of that money and give it back to the people because no one can work. Like that's a depressing, dystopian future. I mean, that's a terrible place to live.
You ever watch Battlestar Galactica?
Yes, loved it.
You ever see Snowpiercer?
Was that you talking about the new Battlestar Galactica or the old one? The
new one.
What was Snowpiercer? Which one was that?
That's where Chris Evans is on a train that travels around the world because the world is frozen, and only that train has it's kind of a weird premise. But there's
this is an episode of Battlestar Galactica?
No. It's a movie. I'm just bringing up two different bits of fiction to make a point.
Oh, yeah. It's a futuristic movie. It's real weird. Who else is in it? Chris Evans is Captain
Tilda
America,
Swinton
right?
is in it.
Yeah.
I think.
I did see that. It's real weird.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird. So they take kids from the pour cart, and have them work internally in the engine because they have to move things around because parts are missing. If they don't, all human life dies. So they literally go in the back and they take children away from their families who scream and reject this. In Battlestar, they had children who were also taken for a similar reason to work. You had people who had no choice but to work on the fuel processing ship. Otherwise, all of humanity would be wiped out. I've often thought about, I'm a huge fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation. How do we get to a post-capitalism world where we still have incentives, but we're post-scarcity? The problem is, as we're in transition, there will be jobs that are essential, which means one of the glimpses we get, I understand a pandemic is different, but we still see a glimpse of people who have to work, kind of low skill, boring, tedious jobs like at a grocery store, while other people who have higher skill jobs are getting their needs met by the government, at least in terms of the cash. So we're here telling, these people.
You're talking about right now?
Right. So again, I understand it's a pandemic, it's very specific, but we're getting a glimpse of what happens when some people are told your job is not essential, so we're going to guarantee your food and resources for the time being.
They're barely doing that, though. It's not like this is effective. I'm
just saying that as we move towards automation, there will still be jobs that are essential. What do we do? How do we, incentivize and compensate, make that worth the people who have no choice but to keep working while the rest of us don't?
I don't know if it's a keep working while the rest of us don't issue. I think it's a problem of jobs being phased out. I think the real problem is automation is going to phase out jobs. It's not going to be about what's essential and what's not essential. I think you're sort of applying pandemic vernacular to.
Well, let's remove the pandemic from it, and let's say right now one of the things I looked at, and we talked about this a little bit before. I met a homeless guy in Chicago, and he worked at a job that became obsolete. I'll step back a little bit.
Yeah.
I asked the homeless guy how he became homeless when I was like 19, and he told me that he had a job. He worked there for 20, 30 years. As he got older, his family, moved away, lost contact. These are different times. Some friends and family had died. When his company became obsolete, technology didn't matter anymore. He was cast out. He had nowhere to work anymore, and his expertise was very specific. So he got a severance package. That ran out. He got unemployment. That ran out. He got kicked out. Now he's homeless. I look at that and I say, how do we make sure that doesn't happen? This guy should not be punished simply because times have changed. But if you scale that up, and say it keeps happening in every different sector, eventually you'll end up with 90% of the population saying my needs will be taken care of, and 10% saying I still have to work, whatever the industry may be. Like that's a transitional period. It's going to be very difficult. We automate most jobs except for some. Some people will still have to work.
Does anybody really think we're going to automate most jobs, though? I mean, there's so many jobs that can't be automated. I don't think that's going to be the. I mean, you're talking about some weird sort of futuristic version.
Star Trek.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we need to be concerned with. I think the idea of universal basic income is wonderful. The idea that your needs are taken care of in terms of food and housing, and then everything else you got to do on your own. If we're looking at when we look at struggle, right? We look at struggle like across the board. Can't feed yourself. Can't put a roof over your head. What if this is what was attractive about universal basic income to me. What if we all agreed that some semblance of dignity is a part of being an American, and then we will provide you with food, we will provide you with housing. Everything else you have to fucking earn. And that's interesting. That's interesting. I like that.
I like it.
But I don't know. People don't work well when they don't have to.
Exactly.
When people don't have an incentive, and the competition is important.